The Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California, presents a homily by our minister, the Reverend Dana Worsnop, titled Spectrum, Continuum, Spiral, Swirl, recorded on Sunday morning, September 13th, 2020.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. I am the Reverend Dana Worsnop, minister of this amazing group of people, this amazing community. And I am joined this morning by a whole team of folks who collaborated to bring this service into being. Here's the lineup of our entire tech team. And today our director is Brian Fortune, assistant director is Kitty Merrill, magician is Kent Brinkmeyer, tech support can come from Joe Osborne, and the on-screen people will introduce themselves as we go along. Just want to note a couple of announcements. First, our auction this year usually happens in October, and we're going to do it again. It'll be all online, and be on the lookout for announcements and how to access that. Also, Carolyn, Bjerke, and I are very excited to be co-leading a program called Wellspring. We've been sending out information about that. There is still room in it, so please let us know if you are interested in joining us. Also, a heads up that for the month of October, we are going to be doing a collaborative worship with the congregations in San Luis Obispo, Goleta, Santa Barbara, and us. And it's going to be very exciting as well. And I invite you also for our water communion to have ready a few things. The thing you will need first is a bowl of water with some detergent mixed in for blowing bubbles and a straw for blowing bubbles. We'll use those soon. And then after that, I'd like you to have a glass of water and a cup or another glass that's empty to pour our water into. That'll come a little bit later. Yep, we're creating our water communion, our annual water communion virtually, as so much is being transferred online. It is so good to be together once more, especially on this Sunday. For those who are new with us, this is a particularly meaningful Sunday when we have our water communion ritual and we merge the waters of our lives into a single vessel, coming together with an intention to remember the power of community, the sustenance we offer one another, and simply to share joyful and sometimes wistful smiles. Today, when we cannot be physically together and with no clear idea when that day will come that we can be back together, we still gather as we can. And we gather, even as fires engulf the Western states, as smoke from distant fires circulates in the clouds in our sky, turning the light around us an odd yellowish color. We gather even as new hurricanes form in the Gulf of Mexico. We are too hot and dry and too wet, and the times are out of joint. And still we gather. Today in our service, we will be hearing music from a couple of different indigenous peoples around the world. And we do this. We share their music to honor them, not to appropriate their beautiful art. And we do it in humble acknowledgement that the land upon which we live once was inhabited by people who our ancestors, the presence of our ancestors helped wipe out. And so we acknowledge this humbly, that this land is holy and it is not ours. These are all the ways that we work to create community. Gathering in large groups and small, we create community, flexible and fluid as water, strong and determined as water. And so let us together enter sacred space.
Hello, I'm Worship Associate Sue Brinkmeyer. I hope everyone at home has a chalice or candle and something to light it with. The chalice is the symbol of our faith and of our commitment to one another. Please join Reverend Dana and me in lighting your chalices at home. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Music Director Carolyn Bjerke, and I'd like to invite you to join in singing our opening hymn, Wade in the Water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in white. God's gonna trouble the water. The leader looks like an Israelite. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. It looks like the band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
That hymn always used to confuse me. Why would anyone wade on purpose into troubled waters? The origins of the song are a little vague. It may refer to a healing well in the Gospel of John, possibly to the parting of the Red Sea. Yet it was also likely a guide for escaping slaves on a dangerous path toward freedom more than 100 years ago. If they waded into waters, it could throw off their pursuers. And if God was troubling the waters, creating a holy disturbance, it would be even harder to follow them. Given the dangers of flight and the greater danger of recapture, divine intervention of any kind was very welcome. Dearest God, please trouble these waters behind me. We are living in a time of such turbulence, and the waves keep coming. A virus is keeping us apart and out of school. Black people killed at the hands of law enforcement, and an election that is coming too fast and not fast enough. Wave after wave is crashing down upon us. And this is the Sunday of water communion, when we merge our waters and remember the power of community. Often we try to call up the more joyful, healing, and soothing qualities of water. Water that is calming and cleansing, refreshing, placid, and beautiful. And there will be plenty of that in today and in our lives. Yet water is also powerful. It can be transformative. Flood waters can wreak destruction in an instant, or can wear away rock slowly over centuries. The troubled waters of the hymn can stir up our lives in ways we need to be stirred up. We need to be stirred up even if it's not always wildly comfortable, because the waters can bring changes we never expected and faster than we ever imagined. It may be a wild ride. It's already been a wild ride these last months, and it looks like we're in for more, and it's so hard to know if there is any end in sight or when the end will come into sight. Yet remember that riding the waves or the rapids can be scary and also just a heck of a lot of fun. Imagine taking that ride, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story and silence. On this Water Communion Sunday, we'll have a little bit of it all. Oh yes, and there will be bubbles. Fidelity is about to bring us some bubbles.
Good morning, everyone. So today, for our Time for the Child in Each of Us, we're going to be having some fun with bubbles. So we asked everyone to bring out a little dish with some soap water and a straw. So if you don't have that near you, now would be a good time to go find it. But before we get started on that, I'd like to share a fun fact that I recently learned about bubbles. So when there are multiple bubbles competing for the same space, they actually end up piling on top of each other. And there's a great quote I found from Ron Hipschman, and he's a staff scientist at the Exploratorium Museum in San Francisco. And he puts it well when he writes, "When one bubble meets with another, the resulting union is always one of total sharing and compromise. Human beings could learn a lot from bubbles. Since bubbles always try to minimize surface area, two bubbles will merge to share a common wall." So, as is often the case, there's a lot we can learn from our natural world. And there's one conclusion we might come to. Our bubbles are bubble friends. They share, they compromise, they join together. So I invite us all now to see how this works and grab our dish water, or soapy water, mix it up a little bit. If you are near a computer or device, just be careful to not spill on anything. We can go ahead and blow. Yay. I invite you to share. You have your video camera on if you'd like to share with everyone else. These are mine. I also learned that when bubbles are about the same size, they form perfect hexagons. So you might notice that. So our bubbles are joined together just like the families in our church are joined together. We may not be physically in the same space, but we can still be bubble friends. We can tell stories, we can play games, we can sing, We can dance, we can discuss, we can worship, we can be with one another. The bubbles are part of one another, just like we are part of this church.
Oh, look at my bubble friends. And in this church, oh golly wonkers, just look at that. That's very fun. Thank you so much for that, Fidelity. Okay, so in this church, we are also not just bubble friends with each other, though we are certainly that. We also reach out to other friends, especially friends in need beyond this congregation in our larger community. And one of the ways that we do that is we give away our collection, the entire collection, every Sunday. It goes to organizations and efforts in the larger community, and also sometimes for funds that help people in our own church or who come knocking at our doors. And we now have been inviting folks to donate online. You will see the link, the donation link, on the next slide, and we'll also post that link in the chat. Our offering today goes to our own Lift Up Your Voice to End Homelessness Motel Fund. Now, most requests for motel rooms come to us or from case managers for people. Recently, however, a community member who knew about Lift Up Your Voice team called Rob March, who was on the team, asking for help for a family. The mom had had a stroke, one son was disabled, and the other son was trying to take care of them both. And the family, the whole family, including their dog and cat, were living in a motel room, and they were coming to the end of their money. They had no place to go but the streets. So Rob was able to use our Lift Up Your Voice motel funds to pay for a few more extra nights. And then he called our connections in city and county social service agencies to get the family the help they needed to help ease their way into that system. The family was placed in Project Room Key, which is a state-funded program, and Rob then helped them move into their new rooms where they can stay until permanent housing is found. The Lift Up Your Voice Motel Fund truly helps people in their time of desperate need. And this is one of the ways that we can share with our friends in the larger community. Please give generously, as you always do. Please join me in a time of silent and musical and guided meditation. Take some moments to fully arrive, get here. Breathe. Be present. Water is life. The water in us, the water we share with all life, has been everywhere on earth many, many times over. It was the water in the tears that Jesus wept. It was water filling the leaves of the Bodhi tree that created a canopy over the Buddha's moment of enlightenment. It's the water that fills rivers and oceans and backyard, swimming pools, wading pools, the water that pours out of hoses onto the plants in gardens, the water that falls from the sky. Water is precious. You are precious. Life is precarious and oh so precious. Blessings upon you and all living things. We all come from water, and to water we return. And I suspect many of you have heard the fact that nearly 60% of our bodies are water. But I have found some new fun facts, giving more detail to that. Did you ever wonder how much of the water and how the water is distributed through our bodies? So the brain and heart are 73% water. Our lungs are about 83%. Our skin is 60%, which makes sense. That's partly why it's flexible. And even our bones have 31% water. Water is life. And which is partly why scientists get excited about finding evidence of life on the planet Mars, because it means that there could have been life there once. Water is life, it is precious. And we still find wisdom and guidance by calling forth the qualities and the different states and forms and bodies of water. They become powerful symbols of community, of the spirit flowing through our lives. A power and a spirit we cannot fully control in the water or in ourselves. In our culture, people tend to like to be in control, to put things in order, into categories that are either or, right or wrong, this or that. And yet, the world doesn't really come in such pairs. It is closer to reality to put things along a spectrum or a continuum, which show more fluidity to the possibilities, to the expression of life. Yet we also tend to think of a continuum or a spectrum falling along a straight line, which is two-dimensional. And really, it exists in at least 3 dimensions. It ebbs and flows, eddies and spins, more of a spiral, an undulation, a swirl. It undulates and flows, reflecting all the colors visible to our eyes, and so many more. And more than 3 dimensions, you may well ask. Well, there is also the truth, the saying that you can never step in the same river twice. And this can all be a little mind-bending. It can be a wild ride, sometimes fun, sometimes scary, and sometimes both. And for all of that, for all of the study that we have made of it, the realization that water is essential to life, it is still something of a mystery to science. We do know that it is fluid because water molecules bind to each other less tightly than solid things like, say, a table. Yet it also somehow has an open structure that is full of voids. How can you be full of voids? I love that image. And so these bonds that are also full of voids make water a liquid like no other, which is also why life evolved in water and nowhere else we yet know of. Yet, it is still a mystery and full of paradoxes. Lao Tzu author of the Ancient Wisdom of the Tao Te Ching, wrote, "Water is fluid, soft, and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield." This is another paradox. What is soft is strong. And there are all sorts of things that scientists don't fully understand yet about water. For instance, no one is quite sure why we slip on ice. There are 2 or 3 different theories that people have come up with, and nobody knows for sure which it is. And yet we walk out on ice and we're on our backsides pretty darn quickly. Also, scientists are not quite sure why water expands when it's frozen. Cold contracts most matter. It slows down the atoms and they come closer together. But in water, it expands. And yet we do know that this expanding frozen property makes ice cubes and icebergs float. This all makes water a really powerful, potent symbol for our turbulent and troubled times. My guess is that the changes, the near chaos, the precariousness we are experiencing are not caused by all of the many turbulent recent events. Rather, I think that the turbulent events are revealing the nature of reality, a nature that might be a little bit like swinging over a waterfall. And yet, life itself is an example of bringing order to chaos. And sometimes we can actually create order in our lives. I love it when I am able to make a list and check things off of it, or straighten up a desk and have it stay there for a little while. I love it when I make my bed and I bring some order out of chaos. And while it is wonderful while it lasts, it is never forever. For everything always rises and passes away. This is the wisdom of many religious traditions, especially in the East. The world teaches us over and over the wisdom of being fluid and flexible, going with the flow of things. And it is a very good practice. We are, for example, growing more fluid in our understanding of gender. Gender is not, and really never has been, an either-or proposition. It certainly falls along a continuum from more or less female to more or less male. Yet more deeply, it's all much more of a swirl. And yet in our culture, and in many cultures in the Western industrialized nations, our cultures have for too long put male and female into boxes and assigned them characteristics and qualities and tried to keep people inside them. And yet I doubt there is a single human who fits completely into those boxes, especially when they are rigidly enforced. Those who demand to express the fullness of their gender like Prince and many others. Those who demand to express the fullness of their gender have much to teach everyone. For there are people who don't feel either gender, or they feel both. There have been human cultures that embraced this kind of gender fluidity. Our Western culture has rather tended to punish it. And part of being a Unitarian Universalist means evolving and growing, expanding our understanding, letting it flow into new territories, carry us along with the current to places we never imagined before. It also asks us always to welcome new ideas and new people, to welcome them as they are and see the gifts that they offer and bring. This is why we have taken up the practice of naming ourselves here on Zoom and elsewhere, the practice of naming ourselves and also sharing the pronouns we use to refer to ourselves. This signals to people that we understand the fluid nature of the fluid nature of gender, or at least that we are working on it. And we want to let those whose expression of their gender does not fit into either or boxes, that we see them and love them as they are, whether they wish to be called she, or referred to as he, or called by the pronoun they, which is more inclusive and doesn't require a either or choice. And oh, the gifts we get to unwrap and explore when we embrace so many perspectives on our world. I love learning that bubbles our bubble friends here, are a complete sharing and compromise that when they come together, when they meet. This is an effect of both the qualities of water and the soap that gives it even more flexibility. And I also love that bubbles, when they do share, form a complete hexagon. And I think of this 3 dimensions, these 4 dimensions, because my bubbles are already starting to pop, that they bring us so many different perspectives. It's not an either or. Maybe it's 6-sided. Maybe it's, oh golly, I get to use one of my favorite words. Maybe it's the reality of existence is a dodecahedron, which is 12 sides. Oh, we gather together, we come together, we hold together through these weirdest of times. Our waters, which we share, remind us of our common, not just our common humanity, but remind us of our common bonds with all of life. For without water, none of this would be, we would not be. So let us remember how deeply we need each other. Let us remember that to be friends, to be a community, requires sharing and compromise and multiple perspectives. Let us learn to let go of control. The reality, the deepest reality is that we do not have control. That has been shown to us so profoundly over and over again. And yet let us remember that there are bonds holding us together. There are voids between us that give us some flexibility and movement. And that softness can be strength. Flexibility and fluidity can be a form of determination. And let us continue to create community together, to be good bubble friends. Amen. May it be so. So now we are coming to our modified water communion ritual. And now is the time when you will need your glass of water and a second empty glass or cup or a bowl if you're all together and you want to use a whole family. Use one vessel for the whole family. And remember, humans are 60% water, and our hearts and brains, which need to be on the more flexible side, are 73% water. Other living things have more water in them, think jellyfish. Others have less water in them than we do. Think of a lichen clinging to a rock. Yet water is life for us all. It is a common element to all life. It is precious, it is sacred, and if life is holy, then water is holy too. All the water on earth is the same water that has ever been. It is really, 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 really old. And so now hold up your glass of water, and in a moment I will ask you to pour your glass of water into your empty cup or bowl, but just wait till I say go. And also please be sure to leave a sip of water left in your glass after you pour it. So what we're going to do is unmute everyone, and then we'll listen to the sound of our waters pouring, and then we'll unmute. Okay, so is everyone ready? You have your full cup of water, your empty glass of water. Okay, everyone, pour. Okay, and I still have a little bit of water in my glass. Now, with your little bit of water left in your glass, take a sip of that water that you still have left. This is the water of life. Water that has been everywhere else on earth, including inside me and inside you and the ocean and the jellyfish and the lichen and the tree, and then back inside me and back inside you. Or maybe it goes first from the tree to the ground to the carrot, to me, to you. Take a moment of silence to feel your connection to all of life. If you have yet another few drops of water with their bondedness and their voids in between, take one more sip. Let that refreshment in. And please join me in prayer, a spoken meditation. Holy beingness, of many names and no name, mystery beyond all naming, spirit of life which flows within and among and beyond us this day and always. May water revive our parched souls. May it soothe our weary, heated foreheads. May it remind us of our connection to life and to one another. And may we hold in sadness, in sorrow, in worry, and in love those who are experiencing fires directly, who are running from the fire, the heat, the dryness right now, as we have done in our past, as we may yet do in our future. May we know we are connected. We are connected to them and to each other. Yes, from the water flowing in our veins. And yes, also from the heat and the fire and the spark and the light that also brings living and can also bring destruction. May we know we are all precious, that all life is precious, and that we are in this predicament, this precarious situation, in this glorious life together. And may all those who are ill find healing. May those who are in despair find hope. May those who are without shelter find home. May those who are experiencing conflict and war find peace. And may the waters fall upon the fires bringing destruction. Amen, and blessed be.
Please join Reverend Dana and me in extinguishing your chalices at home. As always, we extinguish the chalice, but not the light in our hearts, the warmth of community, or the sense of deep connectedness to the web of all life of which we are a part. Those we carry into our lives until we gather again.
I leave you with these words from the prophet. Oh, hold on one second. A world on fire asks. A world on fire asks that we continue to do our good work, that we remain flexible and fluid, soft and strong, so that we may bring life to these words of the prophet Isaiah. May justice roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Go forth in peace. Go forth in good health. Go forth with softness and strength. Go forth in love. May it be so.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Spectrum, Continuum, Spiral, Swirl, presented by the Reverend Dana Worsnop, recorded on September 13th, 2020, for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura, California.